Welcome along to the penultimate edition of Inside the Gold Cup, the analysis show of the tournament. Today we review the two semi-finals played at Soldier Field on Thursday night. With me, a couple of soldiers, yes, the Colonel Clink and Sergeant Schultz of football, Shep Messing, John Harkes.
No, nothing. All good.
Welcome along, gentlemen. Now, something we were bouncing around in the office earlier on today is...
Where does he get this stuff?
You know, it's true. So we have a bit of a chat, you know, discussion points, etc. Why have only three teams, and that's Mexico, the USA and Canada, lifted the trophy, or the Gold Cup trophy, in the 16 years the tournament's been running, Shep?
Well, Dennis, you know, I think it's, I don't want to state the obvious, but when you talk about the strength in Concacaf, these are the three powers, the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. I think it's far-fetched, really, to think there's going to be a major upset, John, and then El Salvador, or Cuba, or Honduras is going to win the whole thing.
I agree, Shep, and I also think that, you know, just to even give it in more detail, I think it's USA and Mexico have really been more of the powerhouse, and Shep had said this earlier, that Canada is just starting to get, you know, more strength within their side. More of a, I guess, shape, team shape, and style of play as well. De Guzman certainly helps. I mean, De Rosario's been there for a few years. De Guzman now is a player that's been a strength from strength at each game. So hopefully this is a sign that even now that Canada is starting to get into that top three, where it used to be just the two. The two horses were running, right?
Yeah.
Now it's a top three kind of horses running, and maybe others will develop over the years.
Well, we've mentioned, you know, over the past couple of shows that the playing field's getting closer in terms of the distance between the USA and Mexico and the other teams is getting closer. Do you think maybe one day one of these teams will surpass the USA and Mexico? And if so, what will it take for them to get there, John?
Well, I think that the gap is narrowing worldwide in terms of the global football. I think the one thing that we want to be concerned with is that gap, the bottom coming up to the top, or is the top coming down a little bit and they're meeting in the middle? That's a concern. So if the U.S. and Mexico aren't playing at the top and they're not really the powerhouse sides, you got to really look specifically at the other sides, that are the national sides that are at the bottom of that table that are creeping up. Is it because of the poor performance by the top two teams, Shep, or is it, you know, is it really that these teams are getting better? That's
a great point. And I think really when it comes to, we've seen individual teams have a run of success, whether it's Costa Rica at the World Cup or Trinidad, but on a sustained basis, what John is talking about is a very valid point. We all, as part of CONCACAF, would love to see the quality of play come up rather than Mexico and the U.S. and Canada slip down. But, you know, I think gradually it's all about, and John talks about it all the time, money, the federation, youth training. It takes all of those things to build a strong national team.
Yeah, and you're a big proponent about putting that time into the youth. We've always talked about how that has to happen. And if you look back 6 years ago in England, just in terms of their club league, you know, on the national side, they were not developing their own players. They're getting so much foreign players that are actually into the leagues themselves that they're forgetting to put their own players on week in and week out, getting that experience at club level football. So you've got to really take care of the youth in order to take care of your future.
For argument's sake, say a smaller country did win the Gold Cup, how would this impact on CONCACAF as a region, John?
It's going to shake it up, certainly. I think that's probably a good thing. Maybe it'll point out some of the weaknesses that maybe the federations have overlooked over the years. Having said that, it may be a situation as well that the U.S. national team, Mexico, maybe even Canada may say, like, uh-oh, somebody's over our shoulder, and it makes you play even that much more better. So it's that type of situation.
Shep, you agree?
Yeah, definitely, and it's really, nobody wants mediocrity,
Right.
and I think at every level of football, whether it's club level, national level, that's why this Gold Cup tournament is so good, because you're on a world stage, believe it or not. I mean, the tournament is played here, but there are clubs and people watching from all over the world, and you need more good tournaments to raise your national team to a higher level.
Yeah, very good point.
Well, upon our return, we head to the semi-finals next, where three of the teams competing in the semis have lifted that Gold Cup trophy. We look at the first two, the USA and Canada, in a moment.
At the Gatorade Sports Science Institute, we test athletes in the lab. Because we know they'll be tested on the field. Gatorade, the most tested sports drink on the planet.
The screenings that happen here might be fun or dramatic, but it's not real life. There's another screening that is real life, and it could save your life. It's a screening test for colorectal cancer, the second leading cancer killer of men and women. Screening finds precancerous polyps so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. I got screened. Now it's your turn, so you can stick around and enjoy the show.
If you're 50 or older, get screened for colorectal cancer.
Work like a pro. Play like a pro. Tackle tough jobs. Dominate the game. Destroy the competition. Go professional. Choose Makita.
Welcome back to Inside the Gold Cup, with the first semi-final contested at Soldier Field was between the USA and Canada. And if we have a look at this US team, Shep, well, Casey Keller gets game number 100.
Yeah, I think that's why he's in the starting lineup. Bob Bradley wants to honor him, the 100th cap. Look at the back four, John. We like that. One change up front that I didn't think he'd make, Eddie Johnson.
Yeah, Eddie Johnson, and you know, as we talked about a couple days ago, Shep, we were looking for maybe pace to get in behind the back line of Canada, and sometimes they play a 3 in the back. So that's what he was looking for. I think, you know, to play off of Clint Dempsey, the movement off the ball is very good, and maybe because he's on the pitch, the defender has to worry a little bit more about him, gives Clint Dempsey a little bit more space to play.
John, you mentioned in our preview show that maybe you might see Phil Huber in there in the middle. You're surprised that he wasn't included in this squad?
Am I surprised? I mean, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised. I think he's good on the ball, and I think when you're under pressure, especially playing against a higher level team like Canada, that you need somebody to hold the ball and dictate the pace of the game through the midfield. So, yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to see him. I'm not the national team coach, Bob Bradley is. But having said that, Bob, I think, as we talked about, Shep, 2 games ago, that he was really more comfortable of having 2 guys centrally holding in that defensive midfield spot.
I totally agree with you, John, that Bob has shown he's more comfortable, whether it's Mastroianni and Michael Bradley, whether it's Ricardo Clark. He wants 2 holding guys with more bite on the defensive side of the ball.
And he kind of has to do that, Shep, because of the actual players that he has in his, you know, front line is more like Dempsey, mixture of Donovan, it's a mixture of Eddie Johnson, it's a mixture of Ching, it's a mixture, you know, Beasley. These guys aren't really well known for defensive plays. So the attacking team, you need to have that core holding it back, so that's probably why Benny's not out there.
And I also think that, you know, the factor was he's playing Canada, De Guzman, De Rosario coming out of the midfield. That factored in as well.
Absolutely.
Well, for Canada, Stephen Hart decided to go with an unchanged lineup for this particular game against the US.
Well, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Pat Onstad in goal. We've talked about their back four. Talk about what they have in the midfield and up front, John.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Stellateri, he does get forward quite a bit, but look, the main threats are always going to be guys like De Rosario and De Guzman. They've got to get on the ball, but they've got to have that supply from Nash, you know, who I think, you know, kind of struggled a little bit throughout this match. Having said that, Gerber and Hutchinson are always good target guys to, you know, to get around the top of the 18, and they're going to get sniffs, they're going to get their chances.
Now, you mentioned that Canada's run hot and cold in this tournament against the US in this particular game. There was a lot of physicality in the game, Shep.
Well, I think we've watched Canada in this tournament, and they had their bumps, but I thought they were playing well. We thought, both John and I, the key to the game for Canada, there were 3 big players, De Guzman, De Rosario, Pat Onstad, 4 players, Stellateri. They all had to have big games, and it turned out they didn't.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at how the USA went up against Canada.
Well, it started out real fast, John Dennis. U.S. attacking. Donovan looks up, puts it to the right. Frankie Haydock strikes it with the right foot off the post. Look at the vision of Donovan. Look at the strike by Haydock.
Yeah, I mean, he's just looking to lay this up. Perfect way to the pass. That's what you love to see. It's not like he has to take a touch. He can run onto it in stride. And a good finish from Frankie Haydock. Don't often see him at the top of the box, Chef, do we really, from the right back position, but he does get down the wing quite a bit in a frantic pace, and here's a great ball in behind.
Yeah, this is going to turn out to be the second goal for the U.S. PK, Donovan takes it. I was surprised Onstad took him down. Get into the second half. The U.S. again, with their speed, continued to get opportunities.
Yeah, and this one, Beasley, I thought he was just going to take that touch past Onstad. This one here, Landon Donovan definitely needs to work on his left peg with the LA Galaxy in training. But having said that, look, it's a chance They've got the speed. They're trying to get in behind Canada. When they put the pressure on them, they coughed it up.
Yeah, Canada didn't quit, though. I'll tell you what, they came back, and look at their substitute. Hume cuts it back to the left foot. John, that's a great goal.
Well, the Leicester City boy, Ian Hume, cuts inside and uses Bocanegra basically as a shield to get around our boy, Casey Keller. Can't get to that one, but look at a save off the line there.
Yeah, I talk about goalkeeper saves. This, for me, one of the greatest saves of the tournament. Dempsey gets up, smacks it on goal. Look at Hume right on the line, clears it off.
Don't try that one at home, kids. But anyway, it worked. But this chance, very controversial. He was not offside, Shep, when the ball was actually played. This just, I don't know what,
Gooch.
honestly, what Gooch was thinking about. He just nodded this ball down as if he took a backhander from Canada. You know, how much money is being paid, I'm not sure.
That's, you know what, this, you got to feel bad for Canada. That's shocking. Both you and I have seen that replay 100 times. He was onside. It is what the referee says. Canada's done.
Yeah,
well, statistically, a fairly even game. The USA eventual winners over Canada, 2-1. But as you guys mentioned, the thing that everyone's talking about is that offside call, including Stephen Hart. He basically in the press conference, he said whether it was off Gooch, whether it was off our own player when he kicked it, our player was onside. It should have gone to extra time. And as you could see at the end of the match, if you're watching the full match, Canada were absolutely fuming, Shep.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you where I stand on it. You know, those things happen. Here's the play, and when the ball is struck, you're going to see he's clearly onside. Here the ball is being played out. Here's the strike. John, what in the world is Gooch doing? I think you're right. You and I were just talking about it. He was undecided whether to head it back to Casey Keller or to clear it out. Right now, bang, freeze it. Clearly, he's in an onside position, Hutchinson, and then Gooch. Gooch is having a nightmare in this tournament. Here he's indecision, and that should have been the tying goal in stoppage time.
Absolutely. You can even see the surprise on Bocanegra's face, so I think kept him onside of how are you playing this ball in behind me from a header. Doesn't make sense. I mean, he was in between minds. He didn't know that flick it back to Casey Keller or to clear it out over the top, and he doesn't do either. He puts it into a very dangerous position. Very lucky, and again, I agree with Shep too. These things happen in football. Referees are going to make mistakes. Linesmen, the referee's assistants, are not going to see the play sometimes or even time it, and it's going to either go for you or go against you. You've got to live with it and move on. It's just unfortunate that it comes at a time and a period in a game, which is a very, very important game, that really is bad for Canada.
Here's where I come out on it, though. When you come to Canada, they can be upset about that call for sure. They can be upset, I think. I've never seen a foul like Bocanegra's on de Guzman. That should have been a straight red card.
That is unbelievable. I've never seen it in any match.
That's shocking.
Ever.
But where I come out, they're big players. De Guzman, Stelteri, De Rosario, Pat Onstead. They didn't come through. They lost the game.
Yep. In terms of discipline, Shep, there was a little bit of a lack of discipline from some players in the USA side.
Yeah, there's no question there was. And I think when you talk about this U.S. team, from their holding midfielders forward, I love the way they play. But in the back, John, I think they're having a nightmare.
Yeah, they are. And it's definitely disarray. Here we see this tackle from Carlos Bocanegra. It's not even coming low and late to the ball. He comes high, catches him in the knee. De Guzman flipping right over. Referee saying, yeah, I'm going to let the play on, which we didn't see in the replay. But then he books him after the effect. It was just a straight red.
Yeah, and this game continued to get rough. This is a real bad one for Frankie Haydock because this causes him to miss the final. His second yellow card. Not sure whether he got it, John, for the initial elbow on the header or descent after. And then Michael Bradley, that's just a young, inexperienced player. He had, you saw it, at least 3 guys giving him cover. He saw De Guzman, wanted to take him down. He'll miss the final as well.
Yeah, I mean, Michael makes a, rush of blood to the head there, rash decision. Maybe tactically a good situation where he makes that decision, but having said that, he did have players behind the ball. It was the 89th minute. Yep. So it's coming late, and he's thinking, we've got to hold this lead and get to the final. So maybe he just lunges at him from behind, and that's exactly what he did, really. No maybes about it. That's exactly what he did.
I thought he had a great game, though, before.
Yeah, he played well. He played well, and this is the thing. Shep talked about it. I mean, the big guys from Canada, De Guzman, De Rosario, throughout the midfield, it took Ian Hume to come on as a sub to really add a little bit more diversity through the midfield and a little bit more energy. He brought the game up to another level for Canada. The other boys were shut down. That was the other thing. USA at least did a good job through the midfield of shutting things down. Here he is challenging in the air. And of course, yeah, he's a Leicester boy. He's going to get a little bit physical here and there. He's going to challenge every ball he can. But that's what you want from a player. Don't give me 70%. Go on and give me 100%, as much as you can in every challenge.
Yeah, John, you know, especially your coach, and when you put a sub in the game, that's exactly what you want. You want to change the pace of the game, and how about this goal? You can't do it any better than that. Cuts it back to the left peg, goes far post. I mean, he brought life to this Canadian team.
Absolutely. Not a very strong game from Bocanegra for me, but at the end of the day, Hume was there attacking and defending as well off of Dempsey's header. Did very well. I mean, he put the back line again, Shep. I think we talked about this, but a little bit more disarray, you know, especially in that last third of the game. It was just like, you know, they didn't know how to mark him. They didn't know to get tight to him. He was finding himself on the right side, over the left shoulder. No talk, no communication in the back line for the U.S. Could be a danger moving forward into the final. I know what he's going to ask.
Okay, all right, I will. No, Shep the Messiah and John, I'm going to call you Nostradamus. One thing you talked about in the preview was the American speed, and that was on display in that game against Canada.
Yeah, there's no question. You talk about some of the strengths that this U.S. team has. It's speed with the ball and it's speed without the ball. I think it all starts with Landon Donovan, but here's a giveaway at the back, turns into the 2-on-1. I agree with you. You know, I kept seeing it. He could have taken that another step to the right and just slotted that ball home. Even Frankie Hayduck getting up using his speed.
Yeah, he was getting forward quite a bit, and he puts more pressure on. When you get the ball wide to Frankie, you know he's going to take off and get in behind people. This is another great ball from Dempsey here, and it leads to the penalty. So, look, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think Pat Onstad made a good decision there, Shep. We talked about his angle coming out, but the speed does hurt, and the USA used it quite well, and I think that's what Bob Bradley is playing to his strengths.
Well, one of the strengths, of course, was the speed. One of the weaknesses, perhaps, was some of the disorganisation, particularly at the back, Shep.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be an issue now going forward for the U.S. We've talked about Frankie Hayduck being out because of the 2 yellow cards, can't play in the final, and this is just lack of communication. Most of it by Gooch, but you can ill afford to give the ball away like that in the back, John.
No, definitely not. And you see Beasley giving it away here. Here's a situation now where players are just kind of all over the place, trying to close down. It's in disarray. Casey Keller has got to get a hold of that ball, or not even commit yourself to it. Let your defenders do their job. And that, he just kind of, he doesn't lend a calmness to the back line in this match. Again, Gooch here, not sure what he's doing. You know, be more composed, settle down, be the calming influence on the ball, take a touch, play it simply out of the back. The decision-making process from the back line, and again, Gooch, here he's taking this ball back into his own 18.
This is really shocking because, John, you know it better than anybody. You have to be sharp, you have to be poised, you have to be cool, calm, and collected in the back, and that looked like a team that was really in disarray, and it's a trickle-down effect. I think Gooch is not playing well. You mentioned it before. Bocanegra starts looking over at him. You know, you got to read the guy next to you, and it has a domino effect along the whole back line.
Absolutely, Shep, and when you talk about players, and you and I had a discussion before with Dennis, we're talking about certain players that might not have been available for this Gold Cup, and one of those guys is Jimmy Conrad. Now, Jimmy Conrad is on the Copa America sheet. Sorry, I can't talk right now. Roster, thank you very much. Rastafari. But anyway, he's on the sheet, and then Jimmy Conrad, if he was fit prior to this tournament, you would have seen him as a center back. So I think he's positioned safe right now.
Most of the documentation I've read about the US performance is, yes, they can create, yes, they have tons of speed. The only sort of criticism, or most of the criticism, revolves around the lack of the US side to be able to kill a team off. Would you agree with some of the statements that I've been reading, or would you say, well, you know, they're doing all right?
I mean, to kill a team off.
In other words, Landon Donovan, for example, that third
I do agree
goal
with that at certain times, Dennis. I think, you know, the lack of conviction in the final third, yeah.
That's what
I really do. And I also think that the most concern, though, and we'll talk about that, you know, in terms of the finishing situation. We have addressed that throughout our shows covering the Gold Cup with the U.S. side. But I think the main concern right now for Bob Bradley is that back line. And in terms of looking at cover, you got Frankie Simic, Jay DeMeritt, Michael Parkhurst, certain guys who have played in the back. Who is really that guy, the calming influence, is going to get in there for the final now and fill in those holes?
Yeah, I totally agree with John because, you know, the media might question the killer instinct, the finishing ability of this U.S. team. I like this team from the defensive midfield, holding midfield position forward. I think they have a lot of talented players. They have versatility in how Bob Bradley uses his players. Like John, I'm not comfortable with what I see in the back line, and I think that's the area that really has to be addressed.
Yeah.
We've seen Eddie Johnson, he's had a couple of bites of the cherry with the US team. Very quiet against Canada, but yet in the MLS, as soon as I arrived, he was the man that had scored a double hat-trick.
Yeah, I think that Eddie Johnson, and we spoke about him previously, Eddie Johnson's strengths are getting him behind the back line. He's got loads of pace. And what Eddie Johnson's still trying to figure out, I think, with himself, he's battling his own demons, are how to pull for the ball in front of the back line and create from there. He is a pretty good link-up player in terms of holding. He's still got strength and size, I think, Shep, and can lay a ball back to the midfield, turn and go. But in terms of the run and play, he's still figuring out his runs off the ball. When it's in behind, no doubt, he's going to get on the end of it. You know, can he be the guy who's going to be the main striker? I'm not sure.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And once he learns to run with the ball at his feet and take on a defender, he'll be that much better.
Yes, as we saw, the USA overcame Canada 2-1 to make their way through to the Gold Cup final. Who will they face? Will it be Guadeloupe or Mexico? When we come back, we have a look at semi-final number 2.
Work like a pro. Play like a pro. Tackle tough jobs. Dominate the game. Destroy the competition. Go professional. Choose Makita.
Through the Football for Hope movement, FIFA is committed to protecting children and their rights, furthering social integration and peace and reconciliation. Football for Hope champions health promotion and anti-discrimination. FIFA is firmly committed to using football to resolve some of the most pressing social challenges of our time. Football can change the world.
At the Gatorade Sports Science Institute, we test athletes in the lab. Because we know they'll be tested on the field. Gatorade, the most tested sports drink on the planet.
If you're looking for technical analysis, you have come to the right show. This is called Inside the Gold Cup, and as we saw, the USA have progressed through to the final. They're 6th in the history of the tournament. Who would they face? Would it be Mexico or Guadeloupe? Well, if we look at this Mexican lineup, plenty of talent here, Shep.
Yeah, talent's not been the issue. Results have been the issue. A little bit of a surprise for me, John. Castillo not in the lineup, not even available on the bench.
No, not available at all. And the one thing we did talk about was Bautista. You know, is he going to come back into the lineup here? And again, he's not involved as all as a starter. So, but he does come on and supply very well. He does well.
Someone that is back in the lineup, and that's why I called you Nostradamus, is Pardo.
Yeah.
And of course, he came back from yellow cards and had a massive impact on this game, John.
Oh, absolutely. Fantastic strike for the goal. He did very well. I mean, he's a good player, and he's getting more experience, as Shep and I were talking about in the other show, playing in Stuttgart in Germany. So his style has changed a little bit. He's not used to, again, you can see that in the first couple of games. He was coming back and everybody wanted to do that short little 5- and 10-yard pass, and he's more seeing the vision of the field like the Bundesliga now. So it helps. I think it helps. It kind of gives them a little bit of a breakup in terms of the way they play.
Well, for Guadeloupe, Roger Selnot, these are the men he had to choose from, the 11 men, but the one that made the most influence on this game, Shep, was Grandel.
Well, again, John was talking about Pardo in Europe. Salcido plays in Holland, so does Grandel, and he's spectacular. I think that European experience really helps.
Absolutely. And Florival, I mean, these are the players that they're going with. I think that throughout this match, unfortunately, they gave a little bit too much room to Mexico. So whether that comes from the holding midfielder or the 2 center backs not stepping up when they pull off that back line, I think they kind of let themselves down.
Have you been impressed by Guadeloupe's performance, or do you think that, you know, I know we said there's luck in some games and you know, there's a little bit of skill and a little bit of all elements, but have they impressed you, John?
Yeah, they have. I think they've really gone above what their expectations. I think they've played very well throughout this tournament. You know, the first time in it, they're a small, little tiny, you know, province, French province. So I think they did very well. They did very well.
Well, this is how Guadeloupe fared against the Giants, Mexico.
Well, again, you called John predicting Pardo doing well. I predicted Mexico was going to blow them out, and that didn't happen, partially thanks to the man in goal, Grandel. John, this is a big-time save off the foot of Medina. Just quick cat-like reflexes, gets the left hand down.
Well, what a player, Shep. You did talk about his experience in Holland, and he seems to be not only reacting very well, but he just seems that he reads the game so well as a goalkeeper. He kept them in it throughout. This is another free kick here from Blanco that comes off the wall, but you know, look at how many players are in the box there, but he's a calming influence in the back line. You need that from a goalkeeper.
Yeah, and it kept up in the second half. Here, Mexico, dangerous free kick. Blanco with a header just skims over the crossbar. Yeah, he got too much on it, John. Just wanted to graze that ball on goal, but Mexico, they continued to attack. We talked about the man in goal. Look at Grandel. That's Batista at the far post. Nods it down. Another big save by the keeper.
A huge save there. A great reaction save, Shep, which you know very well. Bang, just getting it out of trouble as much as you can. But what a ball as well from Blanco. And this is a little bit better game from Blanco. And this is a goal. Look at Pardo. I'm sorry. I already know what he's going to do. He puts his head down. Whack. That thing picked up velocity as it started to hit the back of the net.
Yeah, you love to see great goals that decide a game, and you can't hit a ball any better than that. Strikes it upper 90, and like John said, swerving away, almost picking up velocity. That was the difference in the game for Mexico. Hugo Sanchez, smile, man. You got to the final.
Very much so. Well, in terms of stats, if we had a possession stat for you, I think it would be at least 65-30, but Mexico scraping through with a 1-goal victory over Guadeloupe. And in terms of shots, we saw that they're shooting around about 11% in the tournament. So 1 goal from 14 shots, again, something to work on for the Mexicans, John.
Oh, absolutely. I think that Guadeloupe came out here, they frustrated them. They did most of their job. I mean, unfortunately, they didn't put the ball in the net. But they did a good job of shutting down Mexico. I think they made it hard for them and to play. At times, they still give a little bit more too much space to Mexico in this particular match, I think. Although, you know, they pick their spots when to pressure the ball. And that's the one thing that I think they could have capitalized on a little bit more because they did have the energy, Shep.
I got to be honest, I didn't know a lot about Guadeloupe before this tournament, guys, and I'm really impressed with the way they play. I mean, they're playing against Mexico. It's, you know, they just played with a passion, with a commitment, got forward, pressured the ball. In the end, a disparity in the talent, but there was no lack of effort by this team from Guadeloupe.
No, and sometimes you talk about, Shep, all the stars in the world won't win you games. Sometimes it's just the grit and determination and what's in your heart, and that's what Guadeloupe came into this tournament and showed that they have.
A lot of the pressuring was in the first half from Guadeloupe, and I thought, oh, they're playing at such a frenetic pace. There's no way they're going to be able to keep this up. But they went for the full 90, John.
Yeah, they did well. I think there was times where they took their foot off the pedal a little bit. They lacked a little bit of gas coming out of that transitions period. I think when they did win the ball, it took maybe 1 or 2 too many passes to get forward. But we all talked about going into this game that they did have the counterattack situation with the pace as well and getting the ball wide. They used it well throughout the game. They could have done it a little bit better. Had they have done it better, Shep, I think they would have had more success getting the ball in the box.
You know, I think it was a great tournament for Guadeloupe. And like you say, I didn't know a lot about them before. We all knew the heroics of Angloma, 41 years old. The upset over Canada, but they played without fear, John, and they were a beautiful thing to watch.
Well, this is the thing. You talk about football, it's supposed to be entertaining. Guadeloupe were entertaining. Yep. Number one, bottom line.
Tactically, we saw Guadeloupe weren't trying to hold on to the ball and outplay Mexico. They're trying to knock it long and catch them on the break. Good tactic from them in this game, Shep?
Yeah, I don't think they can match up Guadeloupe. They couldn't match up in individual talent, individual skill on the ball. So they had gotten their success in this tournament, guys, by playing the ball wide, using their speed, got some classic finishing by the guys they needed, but they couldn't expect to match Mexico individually skilled player by player.
No, and the one thing, too, that I think Mexico did quite well was they always get the triangles going. They play in little pockets all over the field. I think that it was a little bit slow to recognize, you know, when to step to the ball and close it down and have that covering behind from Guadeloupe. And then also, you know, they could have got into Blanco a little bit more. They gave him a little time to show that he had more confidence as the game went on. They could have really got up his backside. And we talked about, Shep, how you put players off the game. Blanco, we've seen throughout this tournament, he's throwing elbows, he's getting caught, he's always mouthing off. For me, he's a player that could easily become a time bomb in any match. And I don't think they did a good job shutting him down one-on-one.
That's a great point. I forgot to mention that. John, I think that was the key to the game because Blanco, as you mentioned, he is not a player that wants to be pressured, that wants to be kicked. Easy to knock him off his game. But he's a great player. Even at his age, you give him time and space, and Guadeloupe really gave him much too much time and space, and he hurt them.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of pressure, one man that was under tons was Grandel, and he stepped up to it, lapped it up, and performed sensationally for Guadeloupe, Shep.
Well, I expect nothing less. He's a goalkeeper.
He's a guy, I
He's
know,
a goalkeeper. but Grandel, a lot of good goalkeeping in the tournament. This man, Grandel, we knew he'd have to have a big game to keep his team in the game. I love this save because it's a reflex save, and he's almost leaning, John, to the other post, but he gets a hand on Medina's shot.
You're right, Shep, and the thing is, because of like such a short period of short distance from that strike, he's able to quick react, and this is another good one as well. We've seen it beforehand. There's been a few deflected shots that have come in. He commands the box very well. The one thing that I like about him, though, being such a big guy, he can still get down to the ground, Shep. And that's one thing you look at goalkeepers sometimes, you don't think they have that strength, but he did it well.
He's quick, he's agile, he's athletic, and again, we don't want to keep talking about the experience in Europe, but I think John agrees that it really helps. He's playing in Holland, and you could tell by watching him in this game.
Well, looking to Mexico, Sanchez came out and said, look, I'm not happy with the result. 1-0 wasn't good enough for us, but we are getting better through this tournament. Would you agree with Sanchez? Do you think that Mexico have gotten better game by game?
I would agree with Sanchez that they got the result.
Okay, fair. Short and sweet.
Okay, then.
Yeah,
Are they getting better? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think he, too, you know, we talked about Bob Bradley and how they were experimenting from one lineup to the next and this and that. I think he has done that as well. We saw Castillo in the lineup early on in the first game, playing up front off of, Bautista was in there as well. So, you know, he's changed the lineup as well. He's got Blanco in there a little bit healthier. So, look, at the end of the day, did they play a little bit better? Yeah, probably. But you're against Guadeloupe, and this is a team that's surprising you. But at the same time, they're not one of the powerhouses of the world.
Chip, are you with or against?
I'm not. Listen, you can tell that John did not exactly jump on the Mexico bandwagon, and there's no reason to. You know, you can make the argument they got the result, they're in the final. You could also make the argument, you know what, this has been a woefully bad performance by the Mexican team up until now. They can redeem themselves with one game against the U.S. in the final, but so far, like John said, hey, they got the result, but it's 1-0 against Guadeloupe.
Having said that, I do think, and we did speak about this, like they did create a little bit more chances in this match. And that's something that beforehand they would have maybe one set play or a corner kick that was flicked on or things like that. You know, for me, they did get a little bit more in behind. They were a little bit dangerous. But numbers in the box as well, Shep, because beforehand, maybe it was just like a Borghetti that was up top. Maybe it was just one player that was sitting in there. But look, now they're getting strikes from midfield as well. When you get a guy who can strike the ball from midfield and distance, that adds so much dimension to your team. Because now that the back line of Guadeloupe has to step up and pressure that. And it leaves space in behind.
Every attack, I think John's absolutely right, because we earlier saw Borghetti as a lone striker. Now, every time they get into the attacking third, they're getting 5, 6, 7 white shirts engaged in the play. So they're making a commitment to get forward. Bautista, I think, has made a difference when he's in the game for them. And you're right. I mean, that Porto strike, I love.
Unbelievable. They did have good movement off the ball, Shep. I think Bautista was a guy who he calms the thing down and he picks players out. He has good vision. He's not really mobile with the ball, but it's still his vision counts. And again, look at this. More chances on the back post, numbers forward. So Guadeloupe, they poured the energy into the game and their heart and soul. But I think at the same time, I think Mexico was a little bit more talented than them in this particular game, and it showed in the chances that they created.
One thing that I noticed from this game is, as you guys call it, no flops, no dives, no simulation, anything like that, or very, very limited. And the other thing is, I know we've given some of the referees a bit of a hard time, but the referee Moreno in this case, I thought was excellent. When there was a flop or something like that, if he knew it, just let play continue. Would you agree?
I can't believe I'm agreeing with you, Dennis, but that, you are spot on, right on, son. I thought the referee Moreno called a great game. There was no flopping, no yellows, no reds. I mean, he gave a message early, guys. This is how I'm calling the game. I'm not going to call anything if you embellish, if you flop, if you dive. Get up and play. So it was a much better soccer game to watch.
If you want to talk about that, Landon Donovan actually picked up a yellow card in the other match for flopping and diving. So, you know, I think the referees know that they need to crack down on those things, although, you know, he never sent off Carlos Bocanegra for that vicious tackle in the midfield. But, Carlos, you got lucky, my man. So stay on your feet right now. You're in the back line. Keep him in front of you. Very simple.
Now, with the Mexican side going up to the the final against USA, and that's something that we're going to preview very, very shortly in the show. For them, the performance was better, but not outstanding. So what would be some of the areas that you think that they need to work on apart from finishing?
We're talking about U.S.?
No, Mexico.
Oh, Mexico.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Dennis, get it straight.
That's what I
Shoot us
said.
a question.
It was at the start of the sentence.
It's tough for me to talk about Mexico and say what they need to work on because I've been hammering them the whole tournament. I mean, I basically have. Shep's been kind of keeping things in perspective for me. I'm not saying this just because I was on the pitch playing against Mexico over 13 years with the national team. It's just that, for me, they didn't look like a very dangerous side, especially in group play. I think they've improved a little bit, but I still think with the pace that the USA has, they're going to have to worry. And if the U.S. takes the game to them, then they're going to be on their heels quite a bit. That'll create a little bit more flow of football through the midfield. Now the U.S., though, are going to have a concern. They've got to, take out Frankie Hayek, who was always box-to-box. Frankie Hayek with the energy up and down that right side. That's going to hurt them. And Gooch, you got to get yourself sorted out in the central part of the defense. Two center backs for me, it's always been a situation where I've always, as I followed the game and grew up as a kid, in the Dutch style, those two center backs are the playmakers on the field. I know everybody says the number 10 is the playmaker. Those two dictate the pace. They dictate the distribution out of the back line. They find players wide in the midfield as well, and the wingers over the top. And they play balls right through the midfield up to the front men. So it's going to be important that they really start well.
Hey, John, we were talking about Mexico.
Yeah,
okay, let's get back to
the U.S. I'm talking about the U.S.
Yeah.
Mexico, they're in green shirts or white. Who cares? Let's get on with the football. Thank you very much.
All right, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go to a break and then we'll get into the Mexico-USA preview very short. Is that okay?
Gracias, mi amigo. Okay, ciao.
All right, when we come back, we preview the final, the big final between the USA and Mexico. In the meantime, here's some of the goal leaders and all-time scorers in this competition.
Gatorade Sports Science Institute. We test athletes in the lab. Because we know they'll be tested on the field. Gatorade, the most tested sports drink on the planet.
The screenings that happen here might be fun or dramatic, but it's not real life. There's another screening that is real life, and it could save your life. It's a screening test for colorectal cancer, the second leading cancer killer of men and women. Screening finds precancerous polyps so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. I got screened. Now it's your turn, so you can stick around and enjoy the show.
If you're 50 or older, get screened for colorectal cancer.
Work like a pro. Play like a pro. Tackle tough jobs. Dominate the game. Destroy the competition. Go professional. Choose Makita.
Welcome back to Inside the Gold Cup, your technical analysis show through the period of the tournament. My name's Dennis Katsanos, with me Shep Messing and John Harkes, and it is the final that everyone predicted. Hello guys, hello.
Hello,
it is the final that everyone predicted. The USA and Mexico, the two powerhouses of Concacaf, will meet, and if we have a look at the bracket, yes, this is how they got there. A sensational tournament. Canada beat Guatemala, then they faced the USA, and the USA overpowered them 2-1 as we saw, and for Mexico they played the fairy tale team Guadeloupe, a 1-0 victory, and Mexico and the USA shall meet once more in the final. In terms of a final, Shep, you couldn't ask for a better one, could you, really?
Hey, Dennis, don't get so serious
Dennis,
on us, mate.
Don't tell me what I think. No, really. No. Look, I think when this tournament started, there were some upsets, some bumps along the way, but it was almost preordained that Mexico would meet the U.S. in the final. Now, I may have some different thoughts than my sidekick, John Harkes, and I love him.
Did you say prearranged?
He's
That
my
it was
brother.
U.S.-Mexico in the final? Or
preordained.
Preordained.
Prearranged.
It's poetic
Sorry.
justice. Poetic justice.
Mexican rep with the U.S. game, I don't get it, but go ahead.
First of all, we looked at these two teams, their history. I throw history out the window.
Yeah.
I mean, all it counts is the 90 minutes ahead for these two teams. I think it should be a great game.
I think it'll be a good game. I think that whether or not everybody expected them to be in the final, I think that Mexico struggled throughout this tournament. Although they made it through, and that, like you said at the end, Hugo Sanchez is waving to the crowd and the pressure's off his back.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're not a good coach of Mexico unless you can beat the U.S. I mean, basically, that's just how it is. And the U.S. have turned the tables in the last 7, 8 years. They've gotten the great results in the U.S. Side against Mexico. So this is going to be a tough game for them, the matchups. I think that the U.S. have more confidence than Mexico right now. Mexico comes through after beating Guadeloupe 1-0, beating Costa Rica 1-0. So they're not really firing on all cylinders in terms of getting the goals and putting the ball in the back of the net. The U.S. are scoring goals, but now they've got to worry about the defense. So tactically, who's going to outsmart who? It's all about the wits of the manager and how he sets up this team.
All right, I know you guys don't want to talk about history particularly, Shep, but I'm going to go historical on you. I'm going to talk about how many times they've gone head-to-head and how they've met, etc. Of course, in the Gold Cup, 91. The USA defeated Mexico 2-0 in the semi-final. I think it was their first victory since 1980 against Mexico, so a ton of history in that game. And then in 93 and 98, as you would know, Mr. Harks, 4-0 and 1-0 to Mexico. So the only time that the USA has ever lost in the final is to Mexico. In terms of all time, yes, correct, Mexico 29-13, but in the last 8 years, sorry, it's the last 7 years, I should say, since 2000, the USA hasn't lost at home to Mexico. So some good signs for the USA there. Tell me, John, on a personal note, playing against Mexico, and particularly in those 2 Gold Cup finals, how difficult is it to play the Mexican side?
Well, I think it's a hard team to play against, number one, because they do have some pace and quickness of the ball movement as well. I think what they do very well, not just in terms of the attack and moving the ball and getting off the ball as well, which we saw in the last game. I thought their movement was great, Shep. We talked about getting players forward. And it was almost like free-flowing football a little bit, and the Dutch do it very well. They've done it throughout the 70s into the 80s. They move off the ball. One guy plays here, he moves off the ball and covers for him, he moves off the ball and covers for him. They do that very well. Defensively, they've always been a team that knows how to shut down and press together as a unit. They do it very well, starting with the 2 strikers. They wait for that one chance where the ball's a little bit too off-paced and it's not going to meet its mark, really. Then they go all as a team. They know. They work on it in training. They do it very well. So throughout the years, and it's also been very physical and late challenges and spitting in the face and pulling and punching. And so it's physical. And I think it's still going on today.
It is. Here's my overview of the game, guys, and it's why I throw history really out the window. It's all about the next 90 minutes. And when I look at these 2 teams, I think on paper, performance, John, in this Gold Cup, the U.S. is the better team. Having said that, I think this game means more to Mexico. We talk about playing on home soil. They're going to be playing in front of a packed house, 60,000 people, predominantly Mexican fans in the final. So do I think Mexico is going to win the game? I give them a real good chance to do it, because what I don't like about the U.S. is they look a little bit in disarray at the back. They're going to be young and inexperienced. Maybe a Jonathan Spector has to play it right back. The 11 starters from Mexico in the final, they know what this game means. So do I think the U.S. is a better team? I do think they're a better team. Do I give Mexico more than a good chance to win in the final? I do.
Ooh, sorry, I was just looking at you, John.
No,
there.
this is strictly as analyst. Look, I played against Mexico.
It doesn't matter about it's how you break it down, and I think that Shep has a good point, a valid point. Gut feeling, and I'm not in the prediction business. I know you called me Nostradamus a few times here and there, but I think the U.S. is going to win this game. I really do. I just think that they're going to overpower them. There's going to be too much that they have to worry about in terms of the U.S. attack. You know, whether it comes through Beasley and Donovan and Dempsey, they might have Ching in there, they might have Twellman. I don't know who it may be, but they've got enough players to really create havoc in the final third for the U.S. in an attacking formation. I do think they need to worry about the defense, like we talked about beforehand. It's going to be important to see who he puts in there next to Pablo Mastroianni, who's going to be replacing his son, Michael Bradley. So Bob's got to pick out that, whether it's Ricardo Clark, and he has 2 holding players that shut down the passing lanes throughout, because we saw Bautista really have a little bit more room to play, and like Shep said, he's a good player on the ball. He's calm and cool and collective. He picks players out, and Mexico were able to overlap and play through him and get numbers forward. So you got to shut that down.
Yeah, and John makes a good point, because for the coaches, Hugo Sanchez and Bob Bradley, it really is a little bit of a tactical chess match, because I agree with John. If the U.S. gets into attack mode, they should be able to get behind and score on Mexico. So maybe you play Feilhaber in a midfield instead of 2 really more defensive midfielders. These coaches are going through tactical matchups in their own mind. If the U.S. can get on the front foot, make Mexico stay back and defend, U.S. should do great.
And the other thing, too, is you talk about Salcedo, which you love. He's a good player, and I like him as well. I think he's a very good player, and his experience overseas has really helped him. He's a player that likes to get forward quite a bit. Now, if you're playing Landon Donovan on that right side, is he going to be the man who's going to defend and track back? I don't think so.
Good point.
One thing that's been noted about the Mexican team in their last two performances, very good at holding on to the ball. We know the US is phenomenal going forward with speed, but how do you dispossess a side like Mexico if they're controlling the ball for long periods of time, John?
Well, I need to dispossess them. I think that the U.S. have got to come out and really high press. I think if you sit back and you give Mexican side more time and space to shove the ball about and create a little bit of confidence in their game, then they have good ball circulation and they can pick you off. And you can't drop off your line because now you don't know where to keep your line. If you're given too much pressure, too much space, and there's no pressure on the ball, you can't dictate a back line. They're already having problems in the back as it is, so the pressure does have to come from up front. If they start that early in the game and they're able to take the game to them in a more positive fashion than maybe what they did against Canada, I think they'll be successful.
It's always a two-edged sword, and John and I were talking about it
That's
before.
the gamble, right?
Right, because you talk about for the U.S., you talk about and I love the team going forward, but you take Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey, DeMarcus Beasley, not real good defenders.
Right.
I mean, great Eddie Johnson, not really great tracking back, trying to win the ball back. So when they're running into space, they're running off the ball and they're attacking, that's when it's going well for the U.S. But the chess match is those 4 or 5 players, can they get back and defend, knock Mexico off their possession game? I don't think so, as well as some of the other players on the team.
The other thing, too, that you've got to keep in mind is that at this level, and when you're competing in the final, it's a different adrenaline level, everything else. Do they have the physicality to match up against Mexico? Will Mexico, in the back of their minds, will Hugo be saying to them, hey, boys, get out there,
get stuck in.
Rattle Donovan, get stuck into the tackles, knock Beasley off the ball. They're not the most physical players in the world. They've got good pace, good touches. Landon's got great runs off the ball. His vision's good as well, but he's not a physical player. So if they get stuck into them early, Shep, that could dictate the tone as well.
Yeah. And I worry about the young guys. I love the young guys, but you're talking about Frankie Haydock out of the game. So the possibility is that Jonathan Spector will play right back and Bornstein will play left back. These are relatively, and I love Spector like you do,
right.
but in a Gold Cup final, these are relatively young and inexperienced players.
Right, and when it comes to being under pressure, that's where you make the wrong decisions at times. Is it a bad play? No, but it might not be the best decision, and that's what you try to say as a coach to players. That might not be the best decision in the world. It's not maybe a bad play, but you make a better decision at that time when you're under pressure.
And the things John and I are talking about, Bob Bradley is thinking about. So maybe he's thinking, do I play a more physical Brian Cheng instead of Eddie Johnson up front? If I want speed, I play Eddie Johnson. If I'm worried about the things John and I are discussing, maybe you play a Brian Cheng, as a target striker. He's more physical. He can get back and track back.
Well, will Mexico collect title number 5? The last time, of course, they won it was 1998. Or will the USA make it back-to-back titles? Of course, the current holders and looking for title number 4. When we return, we answer all your emails here on Inside the Gold Cup.
Like a pro. Play like a pro. Tackle tough jobs. Dominate the game. Destroy the competition. Go professional. Choose Makita.
Through the Football for Hope movement, FIFA is committed to protecting children and their rights, furthering social integration and peace and reconciliation. Football for Hope champions health promotion and anti-discrimination. FIFA is firmly committed to using football to resolve some of the most pressing social challenges of our time. Football can change the world.
At the Gatorade Sports Science Institute, we test athletes in the lab. we know they'll be tested on the field. Gatorade, the most tested sports drink on the planet.
Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Inside the Gold Cup. Favourite part of the show. It's email time. This one's from Sean from Seattle. And gentlemen, what is your favourite memory representing the United States on the soccer field?
Well, I'll answer first because my sidekick, John Harkes, has many fonder memories than I do.
Oh, come on. You've got some great games.
Well, I think one of
You've
the
been involved
fondest
in some big
memories
games.
I have. One of the fondest memories, we played against Italy, the U.S., and I had a terrific game and kept them to only scoring 8 goals. So I thought it was a moral victory. But really, I think one of the best moments for me, guys, was we were in a playoff to get to the Olympics, get to the Olympic finals. We had to play El Salvador in a 1-game. Winner goes to the Olympic Games. It was 0-0. Went through extra time. Went to penalty kicks. Final penalty kick. The guy was nervous. I took my shirt off. I freaked out. I made the save. We went on to the Olympics, so that was a fun memory.
And the key thing about that is Shep took his shirt off
well,
and never got booked. Because back in the day, they didn't care.
No,
They're like,
true.
yeah, say the guy's good looking. Let's see it. No, I think to answer your question, I've been very fortunate, just as Shep has, throughout the years playing with the U.S. national team. But my first cap, number one, is just getting that first time you can put that shirt on. You're so proud. Your heart, it just expands 3 times its size, like the Grinch. But the other thing is, playing in '94 World Cup, well, let's go back. 90 against Italy was fantastic. You're playing in the Coliseum. You can't hear yourself speak. Fantastic game. It's just brilliant stuff. And then '94, we ended up beating Colombia, which Pele picked to win the World Cup in '94. It's in the Rose Bowl, over 100,000 people. We upset them. It was actually 2-0 at a time, and they scored late to make it 2-1. You go on to Copa America in '95. We beat Argentina 3-0. And then '98, we beat Brazil in the Gold Cup, which was fantastic. Preki scored the goal.
I never would have pictured Shep as the sort of guy to take his shirt off, though, John. How about you?
You know what? He's been paid a lot of money to do that, so we can't complain right now on the show.
The email didn't ask about your international career, so
yeah. Thanks very much. All right, thanks for reminding me. No, Sean, thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much, John and Shep. And remember, we have our last show coming up after the final. Now, whatever you're doing on Sunday, make sure you check that out. Mexico and the USA, it is absolutely huge. And if you would like to mail us at awesomeballs.com, or any news you want on the Gold Cup, www.goldcup.org. Remember, 3 p.m. Eastern Time and 12 p.m. Pacific Time, Mexico taking on the USA in the Gold Cup final. We'll see you with the review show the day after.
The reproduction, distribution, publication, modification, public display, public performance, or transmission of this broadcast in any manner, in whole or in part, without the express written consent of Concacaf, is strictly prohibited.